Hello everybody and welcome to Toitu to You Curator's Corner. My name's Sean Brosnan. I'm one of the curators at Toitu Otago Settlers Museum here in Dunedin, and during the great coronavirus lockdown of 2020 I've been making up these little video stories from early Dunedin to provide some entertainment to our museum visitors who can't at the moment physically visit Toitu. Now today's story is going to be about the first hotels in Dunedin and the first Christmas. Hotels, yes indeed, there were two of them, built within just 100 metres of each other within the first 8 months of the settlement. The first was called the Commercial Inn, and it opened in June 1848, so just 3 months or so after the arrival of the settlers. It was located at the bottom of High Street, the place now occupied by the Southern Cross Scenic Circle Hotel, the casino. And you can see it here, identified by Charles Kettle in his May 1848 sketch of Dunedin from the bay, and also possibly here in his 1849 view of the township from Stafford Street. Now that particular piece of land had been leased by John de la CONDAMINE Carnegie, a passenger on the Phillip Land. What a great name he had. Also a fascinating character. We might actually speak a little bit more about him in a future episode. Now, Carnegie hadn't built it, he had nothing to do with it. He subleased the front part of his section to Thomas Samuel Watson, a carpenter from Kent in England who'd been one of the labourers employed by Charles Kettle from Wellington, who came down with him to undertake the survey of Dunedin in 1846. Once that work was over, Watson, like quite a few of the married men among the survey party, chose to stay here in Dunedin and await the coming of the settlers. Here's a photograph of the Commercial Inn from about 1860. The second hotel was one of those kit set houses that had been bought out on board the John Wycliffe. In fact, there might have been more than one. I think maybe two were put together with another bit in the middle to make up the hotel complex. It was called the Royal Hotel, and it was on the site that's now taken up by the B&Z building at the corner of Rattray and Princes Streets. Now those settlers among the first party who had pre-purchased land in Otago got their first chance to choose which bits of land were going to be theirs on the 21st of April 1848, so about a week after the Phillip Lang arrived. There was a ballot to give them the order of choice, and interestingly enough, the first few selectors chose spots at Port Chalmers. The first man who instead chose a site in Dunedin was David Garrick, a lawyer who'd come out on the John Wycliffe, and who was Dunedin's first lawyer, and he chose that site on the corner of High and Princes Streets, Rattray Street on the other side. He quickly on-sold it to a fellow passenger on the John Wycliffe, Alexander MacDonald, who was better known among the early settlers as Shirley Shirley for his constant use of that refrain, gave him a nickname. Now MacDonald turned the building into a hotel and opened it for business on the 28th of December 1848. But there's another angle to the story of the hotels that I want to finish with, and that is the celebration of Dunedin's first Christmas in 1848. Now you might imagine that that was a very solemn affair, church-based, with Reverend Thomas Burns leading his congregation in a very pious celebration of the birth of Christ, but you'd be quite wrong. Presbyterians at that time had no time whatsoever for Christmas as a holiday or as a holy day. They considered it both unscriptural and derived from pagan solstice midwinter festivals in Germany, so they weren't having a bar. In fact, they were almost aggressive in their non-celebration of the holiday, much to the distress of fellow settlers who were Anglicans or Catholics, and for whom it was both a holy and a holiday. So, in December 1848, Monday it was just an ordinary working day for the Free Church settlers of Pioneer Dunedin. But Tom Watson, mine host of the Commercial Inn, had other ideas. He, as an Englishman, wanted to celebrate the day accordingly, and he extended an invitation to all to a free dinner at his hotel. Now, with free food on offer, you can imagine there was a big turnout of locals, but there were also a big bunch of visitors, American whalers, of whom there were 30 or so from 5 whaling ships that were at that time anchored in Otago Harbour, and they came along. So, all went swimmingly to begin with. There was lots of good food, lots of drink. There was a communal sing-along with people offering performance pieces, and all was going swimmingly. But then, a local miscreant who was in fact a runaway sailor himself, he was called upon to perform, and he chose to perform a song, The Shannon and the Chesapeake, a ballad which commemorated a decisive British naval victory during the War of 1812 between Britain and the United States. And as you might imagine, this was highly offensive to the American whalers there, and they reacted as you would expect. A drunken riot broke out. Now, we know about this from a memoir written in after years by Lachlan Langlands, pioneer settler of 1848, who as a 20-year-old was himself at the dinner. At first, wrote Langlands, it was English versus Yankees, but there not being Yankees enough for all, it gradually merged into a free fight, and the rule that was most emphatically observed, hit the nearest head. Now it all ended with the resident magistrate, Mr. Strode, appearing and swearing in special constables to keep the peace in Dunedin. Now I wonder how Thomas Watson would have chosen learning the lessons from that to celebrate the second Christmas in Dunedin. Sadly, he never got the chance. He didn't live that long. In late September of 1849, he was down at Port Chalmers conducting business and was very keen to get home again, despite having consumed a considerable amount of alcohol, which meant he really shouldn't have been trying to travel. But nonetheless, he insisted, got in a rowboat with 3 other men who were all in a similar sort of condition, and they rowed up the harbour. And unfortunately, at Blackjack's Point near Ravensbourne, they capsized the boat and all 4 of them were drowned, which was a real tragedy in the tiny pioneer population of Dunedin. So that's the story of Dunedin's first hotels, its first Christmas, a drunken riot, perhaps not what you were expecting, and a tragedy on the harbour in 1849. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, you might like to subscribe to this channel, perhaps hit the bell icon so you get notified of future episodes, and there will be some more of those as we continue through the lockdown, but we're getting near the end of it. So I hope you're looking forward to being released from your bubble and getting back out into the wide world. I certainly am. Bye for now.